Hello, this is Lora O'Brien and John O'Sullivan. We are here from the Irish Pagan School based in Waterford in Ireland. And in this video today, we're going to do a quick live about what does the IPS stand for? And maybe it's not what you think, because it's not just Irish Pagan School, as the letters might indicate. That is obviously what IPS literally stands for. But we'd like to introduce you a little bit more today to who we are, what we do, and why that matters. So real quick before we get started, we're going to be going live every Wednesday around 5 o'clock. If we miss Wednesday, we'll probably go Friday. So you can check in and make sure that you can have access to those lives on the Irish Pagan School Facebook page. So do comment below if you have any questions, if you'd like to see us cover any particular topics in future lives, or we'll do a little Q&A session at the end. So do comment below and make sure that you are involved in our live sessions. So John, what does the IPS stand for?
Well, it was my turn to pick a topic today, and you know me, I'm a little bit cheeky around things like as an acronym, IPS does literally mean Irish Pagan School. What we're really talking about here is in those three particular categories, as in Irish, Pagan and School, what are our values? What is it that we as a partner, as a couple, as an education body, as a community, as a growing representation of paganism in not just Ireland, but also thanks to all of our tour around the world, globally, what are our values? What is it that we stand for? And I think it's a very important topic. I think it's something that we do need to be active in addressing on a regular basis. Because if we don't take the time to define how we act and how we relate to those particular words, then so much can get lost in translation, so much can get misconstrued. You know, when you talk about being Irish, in Ireland, when you talk about being Irish, it's just our culture, our nation, our ethnicity. You know, you talk about being Irish anywhere else in the world, you'll get a variety of different responses, from stereotypical alcoholism to plastic Patrick Paddy stuff to hate, really, in some countries where, you know, being Irish has been vilified in the past, you know. So if we don't take time to really identify how and be vocal about our identifications and definitions, so much can get misconstrued. So for ourselves as an Irish company, as an Irish body, for us, Irish is an ethnicity. It's not about your DNA. It's not about your blood. It's not about, like, you know, you being born in the country or of the country or having a lineage that goes back 15 generations. I'm an O'Sullivan. You know, I have one of the oldest lineages in this country.
O'Brien, actually.
I said one of.
One of. Obviously these things matter just a little bit sometimes.
But again, that's based on a cultural narrative of, you know, being dispossessed from our identity, being dispossessed from our land. You know, even though we as descendants of the people who lived on this island still carried on living on the island, we didn't have our land. It was taken from us. We were controlled by a foreign body. And so being Irish then is this very unique experience, because we're not very far away. Like, you know, the 1916 Rising was only 105 years ago now. You know, we're only, like, if you actually take the timelines, 1916 wasn't the start of Ireland. The Republic wasn't ratified until... We are not here for a history lesson on the Irish Revolution. I just want to clarify that it's only 100 years. Yeah. We're only 100 years as a republic, because it wasn't until 1922-23 when it was actually passed as a republic. So, you know, we're not even 100 years old as a nation, but that still means there's a lot of pain when you talk about being Irish and the cultural influences around being Irish.
Yes, but back a lot further than that, being Irish means being a part of the people here on the island. And whether that was the Vikings who invaded, or the Normans who invaded, or way before that, the Tuatha De Danann who invaded, the actual living culture here on the island is how we identify as Irish people. Yeah. And while family lineages and history and heritage and, you know, everything that's happened in the past is very important. And we're not trying to discount that or anybody's value because of that, right? Mm-hmm. But what we're saying is that's not the be all and end all of what being Irish is.
Absolutely. Like, we've many examples of people coming into the island, settling with other people in the island, becoming a blended kind of culture, you know, and there's actual records of the Anglo-Saxons in the 1300s being referred to as more Irish than the Irish themselves.
Yeah.
So when we talk about Irish and being Irish, it's not just because you're born here. It's not just because of your ancient lineage or name. It is being part of a culture, being part of a collective or an ethnicity that you value.
And the relationship with other Irish people.
Of course. Yeah. So that when we take that aspect, that value that we stand for, you know, people of colour are Irish. People who move into the island and live as part of an Irish community are Irish. You know, people born of, you know, parents who didn't come from this country are Irish if they're engaging with it and connecting with it in that respectful, honest, appreciative, not appropriative way.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that we are very, very clear of. And so from there, we don't stand for racism. We absolutely, very energetically do not stand for that. We very vocally...
the opposite, in fact. We are quite active against racism. Exactly. And very aware of our own cultural whiteness as well and our own past and privilege because of that. Mm-hmm. But there is, outside of the North American race issues, in Europe, race is a little bit different because, mm-hmm. for example, here in Ireland, we have a lot of state-sanctioned racism against our own indigenous culture, travellers' culture, and that is racism as well. You know, Irish people engage in that. Mm-hmm. So we're not in any way saying that we're perfect or anything, but it's not just about skin tone here in Ireland either.
It's about ethnicity and perception of ethnicity. Mm. If you don't sound Irish enough, then obviously there's a problem, you know, in some facets. So we as an organisation, as an Irish company, as an Irish organisation, we stand very clearly for openness and acceptance of all people. And we don't abide by racism. And in any of our groups, any of our Facebook page, if you're going to act like a racist, you'll be told very, very quickly where the door is.
No quarter for Nazis.
Absolutely no quarter. You know? So that's kind of the first aspect of being Irish. The next thing we're going to talk about is being pagan. Being pagan in Ireland has been challenging. Even for many years.
The word itself is quite challenging because it is a reclamation of a word. Pagan is a name that, you know, from its earliest origins has been used as basically a slur, or at the very least a descriptor from outside of the people who were actually like practicing pagans.
Yeah.
But in Ireland, there's also the whole kind of weight of being called a dirty pagan because of the Catholic prejudice against people who were ungodly or outside the church. And for us deliberately choosing to use that term paganism is actually a reclamation as well. And it's something that, again, people outside of the Irish culture may not get the full nuance of. We grew up with, a lot of people in Ireland grew up with almost a fear of being referred to as pagan, especially from the altar of a Sunday in Mass, if the priest dubbed you that godless pagan or that dirty pagan, that would be the end of it for a lot of people in a lot of small rural communities back in the day. So paganism as a general kind of catch-all term is what we use. And also it's because of what a lot of people are specifically seeking. Modern paganism is a thing. It's something that people are beginning to understand in a very general way. Yeah. So it was a good umbrella term for us to use. But actually what we're talking about is animism, native Irish spirituality, which in some ways is often, especially when you get into folklore, is often a syncretic blend between pagan and Christian magical traditions or medieval manuscript stories or anything. So it's quite complicated, again, here in Ireland, what that definition of pagan can actually mean.
Absolutely, which again is why we thought it important to make a stance on that as well. So when we talk about pagan, it is that catch-all term. There is no one true pagan. There is no one true pagan path. There is no one true expression of spirituality that is paganism. Paganism is a collective umbrella term for a number of different ways to explore a spiritual relationship and a spiritual existence for yourself. Invariably, paganism involves earth-based spirituality, being connected with the earth and nature around you. It involves like meditation and introspection as an active practice. One of the other cornerstones of paganism is not monotheism, it's polytheism, the knowledge of multiple different deities. So when we talk about paganism, and the use of that pagan term, it is to just make sure that we're very clear and, as Laura said, to reclaim some of the damage that was done by negative slur of that word. But when we get down into what it is that the school actually teaches, it is this native roots Irish spirituality based on our ancient folklore and based on our expressions in connection with our environment and our world around us.
Yeah.
So
and there's a broad range of courses in the Irish Pagan School, from everything from highly academic examination of primary source material right down to, you know, how people personally, you know, the different teachers personally interact with that and their own personal practices. We have a good range of teachers with a very good range of traditions actually under that Irish pagan umbrella. And
expressions of their own spirituality and the way they follow, absolutely. But as with talking about Irish as a nationality or as an ethnicity and the negative sides of that, there is a lot of negativity in paganism around the world. Like, there's a lot of gender essentialism that happens. There's a lot of, like, you know, and by gender essentialism we mean kind of male and female deity, like, you know, this divine couple kind of stuff, and focusing on something as ridiculous as genitalia to try and define someone's connection to spirituality. And that's flawed. It's fundamentally wrong, you know? And so we, as a pagan body, will stand very clearly about people's right to self-identify, people's right to express themselves as a being as they choose to express themselves, and to be respected for that and to be accepted for that. And so we don't have any kind of, it's not TERF anymore, it's
FART,
you know, which stands for?
I don't know what FART said. TERF is trans exclusionary radical feminist. I'm not sure what FART stands for, but it sounds better. There's far too much stuff which people use to divide instead of unify. People use to judge or to exclude instead of include and involve and educate. And I think for us as pagans in Ireland and as paganism, we're reclaiming not just the word, but also we're trying to make a stance for all of the problematic stuff that goes with it. Because, again, against all of the problematic stuff that goes with it.
Stands against all of the problematic stuff that goes with it. Because for a long while, like, you know, this expression of spirituality is very convoluted and is mixed up. And there's a lot of people who are, well, it's my tradition, it's my lineage, it's been passed down to me for, you know, 2 decades, 4 decades, you know, whatever it is. And yeah, okay, that's where you come from. But that doesn't define where you are right now. And it can inform. But if your paganism or your spirituality is not open to grow and to educate itself and to learn with the times, to challenge its own bias, then there's something fundamentally wrong with your paganism. You know, and that is one thing that we are very much aware of ourselves. You know, much like as an expression of Irish people, we are aware of our Irish bias and our white bias, you know, as best we can be. You know, we all have blind spots. We work really hard not to. But the same applies for paganism. The same applies for our expression of spirituality, and trying to be as open and inclusive for that as we can. So that's our second pillar.
We just have feminism appropriating radical transphobe is a FART. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Matt.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And so the last thing in our IPS, of what the IPS stands for, is school.
Education, yes.
And we are an education body. You know, our intent very clearly from the outset of forming all of this is not to exclude people from information, it's not to bar people from information, it's to get as many people accessing our content as possible.
Yes, the accessibility is really, really important. And before any of the current climate or anything happened, you know, we were very keen on accessibility. One of the things that, you know, some people, when we talk about, like, we don't care what your Irish ancestry is, we don't care where you're coming from, we don't care, you know, as Lou said there in the comments, you know, there are a lot of people whose family were Irish but took them out of Irish culture and they've lost that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in the diaspora who, all around the world, who have lost their connection to Irish culture and by our definitions currently can't access that, can't call themselves Irish. And that's a blow to a lot of people. And we are not unsympathetic to that. And the reality is that we literally have dedicated our lives to educating, to connecting, to making sure that all of those people who are disconnected from Irish culture, from genuine Irish identity, Irish ancestry, Irish cultural experience, can actually access that in, as authentic a way as possible. Authentic connection to Ireland is literally what the Irish Pagan School is about. So
absolutely,
please don't feel that we are gatekeeping or trying to exclude anybody from that. This is where we are and this is how we see it, but we also do work very, very hard to make all this stuff accessible. Irish paganism is not an open culture. It's not a free-for-all, but I would view it as a semi-open culture, in that if you have, again, connection to the actual culture, if you have connection through native Irish people to the actual spiritual traditions, then you can partake in that culture. You can be a part of it. You can be a part of our tua. You can be a part of that connection, that spirituality, that magic, that history, that heritage, all of those things that so many people who, feel left out when they're defined as not Irish are still longing for, And it's not that you can't have that, it's that please, 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 just do it in the right way. And we're not saying that our way is the only way to do that.
No.
We are definitely not the only Irish people who are doing stuff like this. We have thankfully inspired a lot more people to actually start picking up the cause, I suppose, yes, and getting their stuff online, getting their books out, getting their classes out, and trying to make, trying to kind of clear some space. That's really what the Irish Pagan School has done, I think, in the last 5 years, and indeed my work for the last 20 years, really, has started to hold space for Irish people to have a genuine voice. And I wasn't the first one to do it. I wasn't the only one to do it. But I'll tell you a little story in a minute about what it was like when I started. Yeah. But we were definitely the ones who started to do it, I suppose, the biggest. And through the Irish Pagan School, we were very quick to start bringing in other teachers as well, other native Irish teachers, because the one thing we really don't want is for it to just be our voice or our, one true way, because that's not what we're about.
No, again, anyone who purports a one true way or sets themselves up as the be-all to answer all the questions isn't forming an education body, they're forming a cult. It's a cult of personality. They want to, position themselves in a place of authority or recognition or respect. That's not what we want to do. Both of us, surprise, surprise, are introverts. Kid you not.
Me more so than you.
You're
a bit of an ambivert.
I play a good extrovert on TV. But the thing is, we don't want to be in the centre of all of this, but we have had to be in order to make a space for those other people to come along, and it's been tough, it's been difficult, but by being able to define ourselves as a body who focuses on education, on kind of helping people understand, helping people to explore, to grow, to learn, that is fundamental. That is a fundamental baseline of why we even do this. And on some days, I find it hard to care, but Laura's the one who actually really cares. It's no, people need to know this.
Shut up. Everybody thinks I'm a bitch. We need to keep that going.
the other side of this is that because we have put structure to this, because we have built a very clear recognised platform, very clear boundaries and very clear expectations around this, we become a lighthouse for negativity. Suddenly, people accuse us of being gatekeeping or elitist or it has to be our way. We are 100% not. Whatever way you want to grow and learn and explore your spirituality, find it, do it, chase it, be the best version of it that you can be yourself. We just want to make it easier to access good, recognisable, reputable resources and to avoid some of the horror shows of the past. And those things do actually occur and they do exist.
Yeah, but we're not going to focus on those.
No. So we want to kind of just drive it forward and say, listen, you might not know that there is a problem with this book or there's a problem with that kind of exploration. You might not know that there's a bias in regards to this exploration of spirituality from this particular root cause. We want to just give, here is as good resources as we can give. But again, we're aware of the fact that, you know, we have our own biases around that. We want to just be very clear and say, everyone is welcome at the table. Everyone who comes with the willingness to give respect, the willingness to learn, to grow, to educate themselves and experience is absolutely 100% welcome. The people
and
who aren't
respect
welcome,
for the boundaries that have to be in place.
And that's the other side of it. And that's the other thing we want to stand for. We won't stand for people sea-lining. We won't stand for people coming in and just taking up space just to fulfill their own ego trip.
We won't stand for entitlement, which we see a whole lot of. There is, tied up with cultural appropriation, is this sense of entitlement, in that, you know, as Native people, we have to give what other people want or need. And I mean, when we look back on colonization, that's literally what that was. Yeah. And still is. Yeah. So, even on our own island, hi Pat, even on our own island, parts of Ireland are currently colonised still. So we live with this every single day, and we absolutely 100% do not put up with it in any of our spaces. And if people think I'm a bitch because I have very, very clear boundaries in place around that, then bitch I will be, you know. And Pat says I'm cute and fluffy though.
I think that's really where I was going to it as well. To people who are not willing to offer respect and to come with an open exploration, firm boundaries can feel like oppression. Yeah. And it's not oppression. We're not excluding, we're not trying to dictate, we're not trying to gatekeep or anything like that at all. Like, if you approach this with an openness and a respect and a compassion, again, that appreciation, not appropriation, then you will find a lot within our school.
Absolutely.
You will find a lot of scope within the range of teachers we do, the range of kind of content we provide. You know, we want to try and be as broad as we can to help offer education resources to as many people as possible. Because so many people in the world aren't presented with the fact that they have a choice. They're born and they're raised in a particular faith, particular doctrine, and that's what they believe they have to follow. But if they're not shown that there is opportunities, how will they ever know? Yeah. So we do moderate all of our Facebook groups. We have a number of different private groups to go along with our courses, our classes, and stuff like that.
We have a fantastic team of moderators. Shout out to our moderators.
Volunteer moderators.
Absolutely brilliant.
Who give so much time, so much effort to make sure that the voice of the team, of the community is maintained. That the culture of openness, but with safe boundaries, is maintained. And that is something we are both very, very humble of, because it was just Laura and me in the beginning. But now we have lots of other people helping with the educating and helping educate other people peer-to-peer, which is a beautiful thing to see in our community.
Absolutely. Well, look, you don't have to take our word for it. We've been sitting here talking at you for ages now. You don't have to take our word for it. You can actually go onto the irishpaganschool.com and you can pick up free classes. There's always free classes available up there. Yeah. So you can click on the tag on the top and make sure that I think they're tagged free, all the free ones, and where you can just go down through them. There's prices on all of them. So some of those prices are zero. Okay, so go to the irishpaganschool.com, or sorry, www.irishpaganschool.com, and don't, like I said, don't take our word for it. Actually see for yourself. You will see from the content in the school exactly what we're about. It's very, very easy, you know, anything from a half an hour to an hour to 2 hours of free content in any given class, and resources and all the rest of it. And one of the main things we do is, again, really because we're not about just our way, we try and give people the resources and the tools to be able to go and do their own research and not just take our word for things. And that's what we're all about.
Which is why it's important to make sure you're on the mailing list as well, because there's regular resources sent out, regular kind of information to just access and connect, to take control of your own education, to take your control of your own growth as a spiritual person. We want to give you the best tools that we can find. Yeah,
and we do send out these regular resources on the mailing list, and that's one of the things that comes up time and time again is, I don't know what's good, I don't know what's not. You can literally just sign up to the mailing list and get resources coming in every day, every 2 days, every 3 days, however often I find something interesting and send it over, or, you know, talk about a new class or whatever. So when I was starting out, there was nothing like this. All we had was Elaine McCoy and DJ Conway and just a load of crap like that. You know, Americans and John and Caitlin Matthews teaching fucking bullshit Celtic shamanism and Druid organisations based in England and America. And there was nothing that was actually here in Ireland. There was Fellowship of Isis, and there was Janet and Stuart Farrer's Wiccan Coven. That's how far back we're going. There was no internet in them days. Our bookshops here weren't, there was one bookshop up behind Dublin Castle that was like a kind of an anarchist bookshop that occasionally sold a few bits and pieces of occult literature, which definitely weren't getting anything in Eason's. And, you know, there just wasn't the resources. So while the pendulum has swung the other way now, where there's so much resources available for people that it's really difficult, it's really overwhelming to find out exactly what's good and what's not. So I have a couple of things up on the Lora O'Brien YouTube channel, and we have a really good panel discussion up on the Irish Pagan School YouTube channel about why it matters, why good resources matter. And there's a panel discussion between 4 Irish people that really actually rocks if you have an hour or so to spare. But there's also various other, we are always throwing out both quality resources through the email list, on our Facebook pages, in our Irish Pagan School student group. There's so much available, and like, we absolutely do not in any way stand over anything. You won't see anything coming from us that we can't 100% recommend. So if it comes from us, if we pass it on, it's not our stuff all the time. Some of it is, some of it isn't. But if we've passed it on, it's to the best of our knowledge, it is a good quality resource that you can rely on. So if that's worth anything to you, and again, all that's free. Before you even get into the paid classes, obviously we stand over our paid classes.
Yeah, of course. And again, like, if we find out down the line that something is off, we will 100% hands up and make changes that we need to do.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, through our merchandising Elon Otter, I generated a t-shirt which I thought was funny based on comments in our group, but it turns out it included slur language that was offensive to people of the Jewish community. So as monocultural
Irish people, we genuinely had no idea about at the time, but as soon as it was pointed out to us,
it was removed from the merch, and you know, we made an apology about that too to anyone who was hurt by it. So it's not, no one is perfect, no one is above errors and mistakes, but if we don't set ourselves some kind of standard, if we don't stand for something, we'll fall for everything. And that's, I think, what the real reason behind this little live is. This is what we stand for. This is where you'll find us. This is where all of our alignments are very clearly laid out, because we don't want anyone falling for poor information. We don't want anyone falling for, you know, possibly abusive practices. You know, we want people to be safe. We want people to be inspired, and we want people to grow in their own spiritual way, as only they will ever be able to.
Yeah, and we want people to be autonomous as well. We don't want people, like, we don't want a load of people trying to hold our hands the whole way, like, because we want, you know, we want to be able to set people free into the wild to go forth.
Yeah, we're not building any form of centralized structure around us as a duality or as anything like that at all, which people have asked. And no, we may work for the Morrigan and the Dagda respectively, but we're not defining all of this around that relationship or those deities. We're trying to be as broad in our access and awareness and our invitation to paganism as we absolutely 100% can. So,
and Rian there in the comments said, the Irish Pagan School is absolutely brilliant, and I feel like I've been searching for this kind of support, resources and community for a very long time. Rian, that is exactly why I started the Irish Pagan School.
Thank you very much.
Like, I created the thing, even before me and John got together, I had this dream, I had this dream about this kind of support, this kind of community, because it's exactly what I needed when I was a teenager coming into Irish paganism, looking for this kind of education. I had nothing. And there's a great quote that talks about be the ancestor that you want to see in the world. And I'm not dead yet, but I really do feel that like this is our life's work. This is a legacy that we can leave because it was always intended to be much bigger than us.
Yeah.
And you know, not dependent on us, because I want to go and live in a mountain in a cave on my own.
Hopefully that kind of gives you a good insight into what IPS actually stands for, what we stand for, and you know, helps you understand some of the difficulties that we come up against as we bounce off our very firm and clear boundaries. But as I say in our Live at 5 groups, if someone doesn't respect your boundaries, they're showing that they don't respect you, fundamentally. So, I think that covers everything we wanted to chat about today. Do make sure that you're throwing the comments here below. These always stay on the thing. If you have any questions, we check back on the questions before we do the next live. The next live will be Wednesday at 5 o'clock. So make sure you're here. Make sure you're following the page. If you don't mind, if you think anything in this video might be useful to someone else you know, be they Irish, pagan, or in education, send them to them. Share them to it.
Tag them in the comments.
Tag them in the comments. Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Whatever you and them are comfortable. Both of us don't do non-consensual tagging. So don't tag anyone who's not down to be tagged.
Yeah, no fair. Never tag me.
No. But always tag the IPS. Because
Yeah.
we will find you and we will always come back in a supportive way, not in a scary way.
Absolutely.
So,
I make no promises about not being scary.
Yeah, actually, I'm the fluffy one.
Okay. Slán.
Gurav Mahagas, thank you for spending time with us. We really, really appreciate it. Until next time, look after yourself and Slán.